If you're a millennial who grew up listening to alternative music, there's a pretty good chance that you either went to Warped Tour or wanted to go if your overprotective parents would have let you leave the house.
They think I'm like going crazy or something. They try and put me in a mental institute one time, but it didn't work.
Warped Tour was one of the greatest days of the year for fans of punk and emo music in the early 2000s. Heat Stroke, Broken Glasses, Worst Sunburn of Your Life? Who cares? Where else do you get to see your 4 favorite bands all playing at the same time? Or how about seeing Newfound Glory, Good Charlotte, Yellowcard, and Sum 41 back-to-back for under $30? No meet and greet fees, no VIP passes, just 100 bands putting on the best show for all of the fans.
I feel like it's important for us to give back to people that come and show us our support and have for a really long time.
I still have vivid memories of attending Warped Tour in 2003 and 4, right when pop punk and mall emo were starting to peak, and seeing Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, and Taking Back Sunday all in the same day. Tell me about your favorite Warped Tour memories in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Warped Tour founder Kevin Lyman has always stated that the core demographic and lifeblood of Warped Tour is kids aged 13 to 19, and because of this, kept ticket prices as low as possible to ensure kids could make it out, even eventually allowing parents to attend at no cost. In a world where When We Were Young Fest has the same bill as a random Warped Tour stop in Montana and costs $425 for general admission, it's kind of hard to believe that Warped Tour even existed. Now, let's not pretend that Warped Tour wasn't an anti-punk, ultra-consumerist festival in its own way, with sponsors over the years ranging from Vans to Target to Samsung, but at least it did it with the kids in mind and not to line the pockets of Live Nation even more. While Warped Tour changed a lot over the years, from a festival consisting of mostly skate punk bands like NoFX and Pennywise, to later heavily featured pop punk and emo artists like Taking Back Sunday and My Chemical Romance, and then eventually be dominated by metalcore bands like the problematic Attila, the heart of the tour remained the same. The tour also came under quite a bit of criticism in its later years, and rightfully so. On top of the typical touring drama with band infighting,
I got something I need to say. I need to spill it from the bottom of my heart. That Christopher Drew. That dude is a pansy, dude.
You also had rampant misogyny and almost too many SA allegations to count. So in this video, let's talk about just how crazy Warped Tour was and how nothing like it will probably ever exist again. The very first Warped Tour was held in 1995, and by 2015, it was the longest running touring music festival in North America and the largest traveling music festival in the United States. The tour was started by one dude, Kevin Lyman, who'd been working in the punk music and skate scene for years and wanted to put on his own tour. In the 1990s, the Southern California skate punk scene was becoming very popular with bands like NoFX, Lagwagon, and Pennywise, and even broke into the mainstream with The Offspring dropping Americana in 1998, featuring singles like Why Don't You Get a Job, 182 dropping Enema of the State in 1999, featuring All the Small Things. Tony Hawk Pro Skater came out the same year, which was the 3rd highest selling console game of 2000, and definitely helped bring skate punk to the mainstream with its punk soundtrack. I probably lost a few brain cells from the number of times I heard Superman by Goldfinger on repeat that summer. Skateboarding remained a key part of Warped Tour, with skate demonstrations and competitions held throughout its 30-year run. Despite not making any money on the first 30-stop tour in 1995,
I was totally broke ass coming home from that tour. And
in 1995.
1995, and I went right back to work in the clubs and venues.
The tour continued through 2018, in large part due to a sponsorship by Vans, which allowed the tour to be profitable. The tour almost partnered with a much less rad sponsor than Vans, but we'll talk about that a little more later. Just because Warped Tour wasn't profitable on ticket sales doesn't mean the tour wasn't successful. While attendance on the first tour was less than 50,000 between all the stops, attendance peaked at over 700,000 people in 2005, putting it at the 27th highest grossing tour of the year and the 10th highest in attendance. A crazy feat. The logistics of the tour may be the most impressive part of the entire thing. The Warped Tour crew had to set up and break down the entire festival, including stages, booths, audio gear, skate ramps, everything in the same day. To make things worse, tour stops were usually only a day apart, meaning that a typical day for the crew and bands on Warped Tour was setting up, performing, tearing down, and traveling all night to the next stop to do it again. And with the massive roster of bands, this meant over 100 tour buses of bands and crews, making up over 1,000 people, had to travel every day to the next stop. It's like a mini city traveling throughout the night. On top of this, the schedule for every stop was made the day of the event and put together on a big inflatable sign that band names were attached to with Velcro in true DIY punk rock fashion. This meant you couldn't plan your day until you arrived, and you may have the most popular band playing at 3 p.m. and not the 8 p.m. final slot. Warped really didn't have headliners like a typical festival. Sure, they had bigger bands play on the main stages, but Fall Out Boy may be playing second one day and last the next day. Kind of refreshing in today's musical climate. Even with all of this, tickets to Warped Tour only maxed out at an average price of $39 in 2018, but stayed in the $20 to $30 range for the majority of the tour's life. Considering the average concert ticket price was $44.29 in 2006, attending Warped Tour was literally a steal. While some of us may have been lucky with parents that supported us going to small shows regularly, that probably wasn't the norm for most high school students. For those kids, Warped Tour meant that you could see most of your favorite bands all in the same day. And almost as important as a kid in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Warped Tour was one of the best ways to discover new bands. It's weird to even remember what it was like before music streaming, curated playlists, and nearly infinite music available at an instant for the cost of one CD a month. In the 90s, there was radio and MTV, but they weren't really playing bands that were quote unquote cool, especially with the alternative crowd. I remember going to the record store when they still had headphones you could use to listen to the albums you want before you bought them. Different times. With Warped Tour stops being in parking lots, fairgrounds, or other atypical venues, bands didn't really have anywhere to go outside of their time performing. This meant that you could find bands walking around Warped alongside their fans and manning their own merch booth when not performing. Imagine not having to pay $100 to talk to a band for 3 minutes and get a picture. Out of curiosity, I was looking at what some Warped Tour bands are charging for a meet and greet these days, and it's insane. $140 for an acoustic show and a group photo, and another $100 for a one-on-one photo. Really? The Used is charging $180 for a meet and greet, a photo, signed album, and $10 of merch. Insane. Warped Tour wasn't only for the kids, and in many cases was just as big for the bands themselves. Look at how many bands got their start on Warped Tour before blowing up. Blink-182, My Chemical Romance, Paramore, Fall Out Boy, Sublime, the list goes on. So many bands were given a shot at huge exposure as a result of the tour. It was the best marketing tool available before the internet really took over. I talked about how the core demographic of Warped Tour was always 14 to 17-year-olds. Well, to keep that demographic, the tour had to follow trends in alternative music that was popular with kids, and that music definitely changed over the 20-plus year run. One thing that never changed is that the festival always had its punk roots.
It's changed. I know some people hate me for not being as punk rock as I was, but in my heart and soul, it's all punk rock. Bands sing the same way to those kids that these bands sing to you.
The first year of Warped Tour definitely had one of the more eclectic lineups in the tour's history, including Deftones, Sublime, L7, and No Doubt, alongside skate punk bands like Lagwagon, Face to Face, and No Use for a Name. The following year in 1996, the tour added more punk bands, including NoFX, Pennywise, and Blink-182, establishing itself as a more credible punk festival and tripling ticket sales as a result. Generally, skate punk bands and ska bands dominated bills throughout the 1990s. One of the best ska bands of the 90s and 2000s, Less Than Jake, has played a total of 16 Warped Tours and holds the record for the most years played. For an almost dead genre, Less Than Jake are really holding things down. And no, I absolutely didn't forget about Streetlight Manifesto. They just somehow didn't play their first Warped Tour until 2009. Following the massive success of Blink-182's Enema of the State in 1999, the early 2000s saw a rise of pop punk bands on Warped Tour, with the 2001 lineup including bands like Good Charlotte, Sum 41, and Simple Plan, all having massive singles and being staples on programs like MTV TRL. The mid-2000s saw yet another clear shift in popular bands, with screamo, mall emo, and post-hardcore bands becoming very popular. I'm talking bands like Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, Taking Back Sunday, Under Oath, and Thursday. This era was also the peak popularity of Warped Tour. Some of those bands were competing with the biggest pop stars at the time, with songs like This Ain't a Scene reaching #1 on the Billboard 200. The late 2000s and early 2010s saw a kind of splintering of the next big thing, with both metalcore and neon pop punk dominating. Here we saw metalcore bands like Bring Me the Horizon and Every Time I Die becoming very popular, alongside much happier and female catering pop punk bands like Hey Monday, All Time Low, and The Main. We also can't forget the rise of the ultra cringe crunkcore and electronic scene bands like Brokencyde, Blood on the Dance Floor, and 303. That music did not age well at all, in my opinion. The mid-2010s to the end of the OG Warped Tour days saw a range of acts from pop punk to metalcore to post-hardcore and even some metal. During this time, pop punk had a big resurgence with bands like The Wonder Years, Story So Far, and Neck Deep. Metalcore was still dominating with bands like Asking Alexandria and August Burns Red, and we also had a rise of metal bands like Black Veil Brides and Motionless in White. While legacy bands like Less Than Jake, Simple Plan, and Pennywise remain staples throughout Warped Tour's now 30-year history, punk definitely took a back seat as the tour aged. Well, you can usually picture the average Warped Tour band as a bunch of skinny guys with pink mohawks or emo hair. There were a few very unexpected artists that joined the tour over the years. Beck performed in 1996, which was a bit of a strange choice given the chill nature of his music.
There was a good one in New York where they threw a whole catalog of stuff at us, mostly mud.
Kid Rock performed in 1998 around the release of his first album, and while he did eventually blow up, the crowd at Warped was not really feeling it. In 1999, Warped Tour seemed to experiment with bringing some hip-hop acts on the tour, including Ice-T, Black Eyed Peas pre-Fergie, and Eminem, not always to the warmest reception.
The motherfucker with the littlest dick in here throws the next thing.
Needless to say, Warped Tour mostly stuck to their punk roots after 1999. Finally, Katy Perry got her start on Warped Tour in 2008, promoting the release of her first proper album, Stage Diving and All. Some hits and misses over the years, but props to Warped Tour for trying new things. Despite the tour standing for very positive messages overall with the For the Kids mentality, and huge presence of charities and activist groups, there was no shortage of controversies throughout Warped Tour's 30-year run. From completely harmless jabs calling out the dominance of Christian bands as the demographics of the tour changed over time.
What's really important about the Warped Tour, and why I think it works, is because the diversity you're getting on the Warped Tour these days. Oh, yeah. You know, because it used to just be Christian punk bands, and now you're getting Christian metal bands, Christian rock bands, and Christian punk bands.
To bands talking shit because they thought other bands' music quote unquote sucked, Brokencyde were notably hated by other bands.
I know you're touring, or you have toured with Senses Fail. That just wound up. Was that guy talking some shit or what?
Every night.
He just hated us.
As well as by moms.
Have you heard of an online group called Mothers Against Brokencyde?
No, never. No, yeah, we heard about it every day.
Warped Tour bands I See Stars and Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse exchanged diss tracks back in 2013. Attila, possibly the most hated Warped Tour band of all time, also fired shots back at their haters.
Something I need to say. I need to spill it from the bottom of my heart. That Christopher Drew. That dude is a pansy, dude.
Dance Gavin Dance took shots at half the entire metalcore scene.
You know, we don't play just one particular, breakdown after breakdown like a lot of bands on this tour.
And even the Warped Tour founder himself threw some Twitter jabs at Paramore, A Day to Remember, Avenged Sevenfold, and other big bands for ditching the tour after getting too famous. And we can't forget the gatekeeping of punk by the old school bands.
The punk rock community is tricky, right? It's all about the credibility. So you have these Rancid and these bands, it's all like, you punk rock, right?
Simple Plan frontman Pierre describes his thoughts on selling out by going on tour with Avril Lavigne.
But I think that we looked at that whole credibility thing and that whole sort of elitist, like, what do you call it, like gatekeeping, and we thought it was BS. If I go and play with Avril Lavigne or I go with someone else, that shouldn't affect whether you like the music or not.
Or how about this clip of Circle Jerk singer Keith Morris stating that the Descendants aren't a punk rock band.
Just like I would not consider the Descendants to be a punk rock band, just like I would not consider the Buzzcocks to be a punk rock band.
You throw all these bands together on a big tour, and of course the old punks are gonna hate whatever's new and popular. It's the circle of punk rock. The tour also always had this weird relationship with how consumerist the festival was overall. On top of the tour being branded with a company name, Vans, you can see the wall of sponsor logos on festival flyers all the way back to the early days. They really were early adopters of festivals quote unquote selling out. Look at this flyer from 2000. PlayStation, Sobe, Hurley, Epitaph, Tombstone Pizza, Volcom, AP, Ampeg, and the list keeps going. Sure, Budweiser had been sponsoring festivals since the 1980s, but Warped Tour was really pushing the limit of how many sponsors could be packed onto the bill. Bert from The Used describes it well here.
Contradiction to be anti-establishment punk rock when it's like sponsored by Target, brought to you by Walmart. It's all horseshit.
Of all the main sponsors to have, Vans may just be the best possible option. Because the tour couldn't survive on cheap ticket sales alone, Kevin Lyman sought a sponsor for the tour's second year. In fact, they were planning to strike a deal with Calvin Klein out of desperation because the tour was broke. In some weird twist of fate, the team got stuck in a blizzard while traveling to meet Calvin Klein, and Vans happened to reach out at the same time with a deal, and, well, the rest is history. I don't want to go into it too much here, but if you've listened to pop punk or metalcore long enough, you know that there's a pretty good chance someone in one of the bands that you like either did some highly immoral or even illegal stuff with their female fans. There was no shortage of this in bands that were associated with the Warped Tour scene. You had Davey from Blood on the Dance Floor, Jake from Front Porch Step, Ian from Lost Prophets, Jesse from Brand New, Johnny Craig from half of the metalcore scene, and unfortunately, that really just scratches the surface. Then you also had the blatant misogyny of the time. Just look at these shirts and ask yourself how this atmosphere was allowed to persist for so many years unchecked. All I can say is that I'm glad we're calling it out now because the female fans deserve better. But for all of the bad, Warped Tour had some truly unique and cool elements, and Warped Tour was referred to as the quote-unquote punk rock summer camp for a reason. It was a whole experience for music fans and not simply just a concert. While not open to the general public, Bible studies became a thing with the rise of Christian bands over the years.
I'm not gonna be I just want to check out what you guys are doing.
In 2013, Warped created an adult daycare referred to as reverse daycare for parents attending with their kids, also letting parents in for free. The tour always at least tried to promote a safe space for kids, although it often fell short, as we talked about. So the concept was very Warped Tour, if you know what I'm saying. Skate culture remained a key part of the tour, while the big skate demos of Warped Tour's early days eventually ended. They continued to hold a skate competition at every stop throughout the tour's history. The tour was also big on music education, partnering with the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus, as well as partnering with artists performing on the tour to put on classes for concert goers at the Entertainment Institute. Drum lessons, bass lessons, business classes, you name it. Such a cool way for fans to connect with musicians, but for musicians to also pass down their knowledge to fans. The tour also featured a battle of the bands with over 10,000 bands competing in 2005 alone, featuring a round of fan voting followed by industry professionals handpicking the top 4 bands in each city, who then got a chance to play on the Ernie Ball side stage at their local stop. These bands would go on to compete for even more prizes, including a performance slot on the next year's tour. Bands like Mayday Parade, Paris, and Nothing More got their start on the Ernie Ball stage, which is pretty rad. And this wasn't the only way to get a spot on Warped Tour. Warped Tour hosted a barbecue every night for the staff and all the bands after the show had ended. Every year, one band was allowed to perform on the tour by volunteering to become the barbecue band for that year's tour. It's not an easy gig either. Barbecuing every night from like 8 to 11 in the 100+ degree heat is no joke. Charity was also an integral part of Warped Tour from day one, with charities like Hope for a Day and To Write Love on Her Arms joining the tour right alongside the bands. Warped Tour eventually ended the tour we all knew and loved in 2018, returning in 2019 for a few dates in 3 cities, and then being resurrected in 2025 with shows in Long Beach, Orlando, and DC. It's certainly not the same show that we loved that traveled to our hometowns, but it definitely beats the price of when we were young and other festivals of its kind. Based on how successful this year was, they've announced additional dates in 2026. I love to see punk music still thriving after all these years. Zine to Screen is a new channel, and your support means so much to me. If you like the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more content like this. I'll see you all soon for the next one. Peace.